Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gerard Tromp, and I am the current president of the South African Society for Bioinformatics. And today I'll be giving the President's Address 2021. And the beautiful image that you see behind me is the wonderful view of the Havekwa Mountains that I can usually see out of the window of my study. And today I would like to speak about the topic of where are we going as a South African Society for Bioinformatics. I'm going to now turn off the image, my camera, and I will switch to the slide presentation. So where are we going? Quo vadimus in Latin. So to get to this, I'd like to give a brief history of our very young society of SASBi. It was founded in September 2012. It was founded at the joint conference of the South African Genetics and Bioinformatics Societies, the Data Mining Revolution meeting. The major universities were represented, representatives from Rhodes University, Stellenbosch University, University of Cape Town, University of Pretoria, and University of the Western Cape. Of course, there are other universities in South Africa who were also represented, but the driving force behind the formation of our society came from these universities. And we have had biennial conferences since then, and at each biennial conference we have elected a president. The first president elected at the Data Mining Revolution conference in 2012, which was held at Stellenbosch University, was Özlem Tastan Bishop, who was also a major driver and motivating force for the formation of the South African Society for Bioinformatics. The next individual who was elected president is Fourie Joubert, who was elected at the Beyond Genes and Genomes conference in 2016, and that was held at Kwalato, which is in Dinokeng, and was a joint SASBi-SAGS conference, and was hosted by the University of Pretoria. Then in 2016, we had the conference at the Nelson Mandela School of Medicine, at the K. Ruth Caprisa. That's at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and that was called Bridging the Gap, Decoding Genetics for Integration and Application. And Tulio de Oliveira was elected president. And then we had the conference in 2018, a sequence analysis from this generation to the next. It was again, as we have done at almost all times, a joint meeting with the South African Genetics Society, and was held in October 2018 at the Golden Gate Highlands National Park at the University of Free State, and that is when I was elected president, much to my surprise. Our next conference was slated to be held last year, at the end of last year in September, and it was the Bio 2020 conference, and this was to be held at the Spier Wine Estate in Stellenbosch, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic put a kibosh to that, and that is why at this time when I'm speaking, I have been president of the South African Society for Bioinformatics for longer than any person before and longer than I had intended. This is not because of choice, but rather because of these unusual circumstances that the world finds itself in. The past year has been extraordinary because of its disruption and SASBi finds itself part of that disruption. So by this time, if everything had proceeded according to plan, we would have had our general meeting, and SASBi would have had a new president, and I would be in the position of past president. So to introduce myself a little bit more to people who have not met me and don't know my history, as with most individuals who come to bioinformatics, especially of those of my age, I came via an indirect route. You will notice that my bachelor's and honors were in biochemistry and microbiology. My doctorate was in biochemistry and molecular biology. And I did a postdoctoral fellowship in biochemistry and molecular biology. And then I became a research assistant professor, which was also actually in molecular biology, and assistant professor. But all this time, I was doing a lot of computational work, and I was one of the people who could make computers do things. And so during all this time, I slowly became a bioinformatician. Finally, as of 2015, I arrived at Stellenbosch, and that is how I came to be president of the South African Society of Bioinformatics. Now, the Golden Gate Highlands trip was a very interesting trip for me. I took the opportunity of making it a great trek by road from Cape Town, and we did this in 4 segments, and the 4 segments were from Cape Town to the Gerard Dam, from Gerard to a Golden Gate, from Golden Gate back to Graaf Reinet, and from Graaf Reinet back to Cape Town, as far as possible along the back roads. I was accompanied by 6 students. There was 7 of us altogether, actually 7 students. And for many of these 7 students, this was the first time that they had seen portions of South Africa. So it was an interesting trip. And the first part allowed us to do some rather strange things, such as these empty roads, because there was nobody between Maatjiesfontein and Sutherland, and that was the great view of the Verlaten Kloof as you go into Sutherland. And then this was at a coffee break in the middle of the road between Sutherland and Fraserburg, somewhere between Loxton and Fraserburg. And it was on the 300 R356. And as you can see, it is a beautiful country with what must have been a fantastic show of bulbs. All those yellow stalks are bulbs in the middle of what is otherwise quasi-desert. The next segment was then from Gerard Dam to Golden Gate. And the first thing was, of course, sunrise on the Gerard Dam. And then we had another coffee break in the middle of nowhere. This is near Skaapkraal on the R701 between Smithfield and Weppener. And you can see the beautiful southern Free State highland grassveld that is characterized by Temeda, Trianda, Dra, and Eragrostis. It is part of the Eragrostis kingdom. And as you might tell, as a, avid naturalist, the students in my car were, were exposed to a nearly constant monologue of discovery of geology, geography, and all things natural. And as an avid birder, there was also lots to see. So with that, we came to our sequence analysis from this generation to the next conference. And it was a successful conference where there were many things there were many simultaneous sessions, and there weren't too many to cover in depth. There's a large turnout. This is the combined photograph of the attendees. Those are both SAGs and SASBi attendees. And we had a great time. And my students enjoyed it. These are my students. And this was a very interesting time. And there you see one of the large sedimentary formations of the Clarence Formation with the brown deposit. That is one of the later deposits in the Clarence Formation. And so that was when, to my surprise, I was elected president of SASBi. So the election, as is mandated also by our constitution, occurs biennially at the joint at our annual meeting, which is our general meeting, which is held at the conference. And I was elected president. Tulio de Oliveira became the past president, ex officio. Ruben Klute was elected secretary. Oleg Reva was elected treasurer, and Mahtab Hayat was elected student representative. And we also had a number of other representatives, Yumna Musa, Pelalani, Mpangasi, Alyssa Postma, Werner Schmidt, and Cedric Weirley. And the first task that I did was to expand our council from the conventional 6 members to 10 members. This is because I recognized that everyone is busy, and I requested the general meeting to vote on more than just the standard 6 members. So because everyone is busy, our council almost often would run out of a quorum to do business, and with more representatives, we could conduct our business more effectively. This was an inspired decision, since council has been able to perform the society's business, even though we have rarely had the attendance of all elected council members. And in the absence of the expansion, there would likely have been only a handful of monthly meetings where a quorum would have been achieved. There will therefore also be a motion at our general meeting as soon as we can hold that, whether virtually because of the pandemic, or if we decide to delay until the next in-person meeting, which is now slated for some time in March, May of next year. That motion will be to formalize this in our constitution, that we have a greater number of representatives. The other interesting, so this was then the picture of all our council elected together, and this is from the hotel room looking out at that wonderful geological formation of the Clarence deposit. And the other important thing that took place in this point of time in terms of SASBi was the formation of the SASBi Student Council as a formally established committee or organization. And SASBi Council was again established with strong input from Özlem Tastan Bishop, who has been a real diplomat for bioinformatics in South Africa, and we thank her for that effort. So the Student Council has been very busy, has held several virtual events. There was an online symposium that was a 3-day symposium and was very well received by the students and those who attended it. And they also had a online meeting, virtual meeting with the South African Genetics Society Student Council student group. And they also have organized a conference that will take place in September, whereas the SASBi conference has been deferred until next year. So I must say that I have been impressed with the SASBi Student Council, and they have a very strong presence on social media, and I recommend people to actually go to their Facebook page because they are constantly making informative posts on Facebook. So congratulations to the Student Council and Student Movement in SASBi. The council itself has also been quite busy. We have had monthly meetings for nearly all months, except for the occasional end of year quiet period. With 10 members, we have been able to have our quorum for almost all of those meetings. And I must say there have been several members who have put in stellar performances in ensuring that they are attending and in work that they have done. We have formed a few subcommittees, such as the subcommittee now to form that is a nominating committee for the next conference, where we can nominate individuals so that we can ensure a smooth election of new council members and new officers for the future. We've had newsletters at least quarterly, and this has been quite an undertaking, and we hope to encourage and bring in more institutions to produce a newsletter. We have taken the step of doing the newsletter by institution because of coordination for that, but I do hope that we can put out a quarterly newsletter that is representing almost all of our SASBi membership routinely, and also I would invite people to read the newsletters to find out more about student members at our various universities, our future leaders. We've had a few virtual seminars. This is one of them, and we are planning some workshops to accommodate what our membership has requested of us. And lastly, I would like to point out that we have established a biennial silver and gold award for leading bioinformaticians, more junior and more senior bioinformaticians who, for their efforts both toward bioinformatics in general and to the society in specific. So although that our biennial conference and general meeting has been disrupted by COVID, our society, the members of our society have continued to be very active. This is the result from a PubMed search that I did, and I am convinced that I have missed some people, but nevertheless, there were 111 publications already in PubMed since the beginning of 2020, in which one or more of our SASBi were were authors on the papers. And in particular, I would point out that there were also some COVID-related publications, and there CRISP has been doing groundbreaking work, and the most recent publication is evidence of that. That is the Nature publication of the detection of the South African, although people don't want to use that term, the variant that was discovered in South Africa. And Tulio de Oliveira and his team from KwaZulu-Natal CRISP were instrumental in organizing this, and they performed a huge amount of variant sequence and phylogeny work, and also showed the temporospatial spreading of these variants through South Africa. And Tulio should be commended on his work in bringing together a large number of individuals from various South African institutions to pull off this monitoring of an infectious agent in near real time, and the work is world class and is a reflection of the strength of the bioinformatics that is represented in SASBi. So the next thing I want to go is where are we and where do we want to go as a society? And I put in the fancy Latin, ubi sumus, which is where are we, and quo vadimus. And to do that, I want to go back to what we define as bioinformatics. What are we going to include in our definition of what we as a society represent? And so I went and looked up bioinformatics definition, and although we can be quite confident that one of the earliest applications of bioinformatics is the use of the state diagram by Francis Crick that then led to the central dogma. However, the first use of the term bioinformatics in publication appears to be in a Dutch publication from the Leidse Universiteit and was reviewed by Hogeweg in a publication. So the study of informatic processes in bioinformatic systems, and that was in Hesper and Hogeweg in something they call the Chameleon publication of the Leidse Universiteit. And she reviewed, Pauline Hogeweg, reviewed that in the 2011 publication in PLOS Computational Biology. Another definition is how living systems gather, process, store, and use information, or a more prosaic definition is extraction of information about biological systems from experimental data sets. And I think that is where we are at the moment. And doing that is something that requires actually a integration, a marriage of a large number of different skill sets. And we first of all need domain knowledge. And our domain is biology. And without knowledge of biology, one cannot really do bioinformatics effectively. And having now taught more than just a few individuals who have come into bioinformatics from the more technical or theoretical disciplines such as computer science or mathematics or statistics, I have come to realize that mastering biology is probably just as difficult as learning or mastering aspects of computer science. And that therefore bioinformatics requires a combination of skill sets that in and of themselves all are quite complicated. In addition to the domain knowledge or biology knowledge, one also needs domain-specific technological knowledge, because without knowing how data are generated and what the assumptions are in particular aspects of data generation, what is the biochemistry, what are the assumptions about how well we can record the signal in our technological instrumentation, one can often be misled about what it means. And so this gets to something that I stress quite often with my students, and that is we need to enumerate our assumptions, and the technological knowledge is one aspect of where we have to enumerate our assumptions. We also then, of course, need computational knowledge and expertise. We simply cannot do this work without using computers. especially not the extraction part. One can do some bioinformatics purely theoretically, but the practical part, one does need computer knowledge, and quite extensive at that. And again, it is difficult to teach computer science aspects to a biologist. And so, yeah, although it comes naturally to a few individuals, these individuals are quite scarce. And the other aspect that I think is often underestimated is data management. It seems to me that of late I spend more time dealing with data management problems in trying to execute bioinformatics than much of the rest. And it is an aspect that is frequently underestimated in both the conception of bioinformatics projects as well as by the institutions that host the researchers who are doing those projects. And then, of course, without statistics, it would be impossible to arrive at reasonable conclusions about what is important and what is not important. And again, this is something that takes quite a lot of effort to understand and to learn to think in a statistical manner, in a probabilistic manner, about our experiments and experimental design. We also need mathematics to help us to put into practice some of our algorithmic ideas, and many of the aspects of our analyses are derived from mathematics as components such as linear algebra, matrix algebra, as well as the separate mathematical systems such as set theory, graph theory, network theory, and so forth. So a bioinformatician, although a bioinformatician need not be an expert at mathematics, they do have to have some ability at mathematics. And lastly, and the most important aspect, is the integration. So the combination of all this into a narrative, a story that we can tell that turns the data into information, and from information into knowledge, and knowledge is our stories, our hypotheses, and our conclusions. And without that integration, bioinformatics is nothing. So with all of this, we actually overlap largely with the new discipline that is being created everywhere, and that is data science. We overlap in the computational, the data management, the statistics, and the mathematics, but bioinformaticians bring to the table even more when it comes to biology. It is the domain knowledge and the technical knowledge, and therefore the ability to integrate. So we are not at odds with our data scientist colleagues. In fact, many of them could become bioinformaticians. But I think that we as SASBi need to be able to enunciate more clearly that we do actually bring a lot more to the table. So what does this mean for the future of SASBi? So for bioinformatics, we need advocacy. We need advocacy to our other societies, our colleagues. We need advocacy to funding agencies where we can advocate for more funding for knowledge generation. We need funding for more training. We need advocacy to our universities. We need to advocate for more junior positions in the progress from doctoral position, postdoctoral, to junior, intermediate positions, and then on to faculty. We also need advocacy for government. We need to be able to influence government decisions to be rational and based on logic and science, and SASBi needs to become influential in that. And then, of course, we need to speak to our industry and commerce partners. Not everybody is going into academia, but we do also need to advocate to the industry for the members of SASBi. Need to advocate for education. In education, we do have seen a lot of workshops. H3A BioNet has been very active and has been very influential and commendable work there. But we also need more degree awarding programs because of the necessity of a more fundamental set of skills that need a decent foundational education. And in that context, I would want to mention that in the past year, Stellenbosch University has developed or has put into place and is now actively has a degree awarding program, with this year being the first year that we're actively teaching that. And that degree awarding program spans the gamut from undergraduate, honors, masters, and PhD. And then, of course, we also need to advocate for courses between workshops and degrees, which can integrate more of the information that one can learn in workshops. And typically in workshops, we can only learn particular skill sets, but courses can expand on that and bring to bear more fundamental education for developing bioinformaticians. For the members, we need to do more education. There's been a clear demand for workshops, and SASBi Council has started a committee to develop curricula for these workshops. We need an expertise database of all the members of SASBi that is updated annually or at least biannually. And that expertise database can form the foundation for helping to find reviewers for doctoral student dissertations and even master's student dissertations, so that we can be more efficient for our members. And the expertise database can also be a resource for policy and advocacy. We need to become a professional membership society, and part of that is being affiliated with an organization such as SACNASP, a voluntary organization where we can gather credit for our members from the activities of SASBi. And then we need to organize more seminars and conferences. So that where are we going? In the past, there were not enough bioinformaticians. At present, there are not enough bioinformaticians. There are not enough junior positions. We need to advocate for more, for knowledge about non-academic positions. And our vision needs to also be present, and we need to advocate for that. And with that, I would also like to predict that there will be an exponential need for bioinformaticians now and into the future, and therefore SASBi needs to be part of getting South African bioinformatics ready and available to meet that need. So where do we go? How do we get there? So realizing the SASBi ideal, or the ideal SASBi, is we need to rely on our members. We need to have our members be active. We need to work for our members. We need more volunteerism from our members. I must say, much of the council has been working really hard, but we need more members to participate in working groups. We need competition for leadership. I was elected much to my surprise, and I'm not convinced that I made a really good president. But for my wife, Helena Kuivanemi, everything would have been in disarray. I would like to see a more competitive vying for leadership positions from people who are born to it. And then I would say that our youth, our young students, I would commend our student council, which has been phenomenal. And I think that is where our ideal SASBi should draw its aspirations from. And I would encourage our students and the student council to continue participating and to form the future leadership of SASBi. And with that, I will take some questions. Yes, the enthusiasm of the youth is what I was trying to emphasize in that last slide. Thank you for listening. Let me see if I can switch over. Yeah. Yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you for listening. And I am open for questions or suggestions, even. Always we're ready for suggestions. Okay, I see a comment. It is noticeable that the job market has been expanded, private sector has been growing quite well. Yes, I quite agree with that, and that's one of the reasons why I think that I try to emphasize the fact that we need to keep thinking about the non-academic route for for students especially, but also for other individuals. And the other part of that is I think that with our membership, we should facilitate that possibly by presenting courses and workshops. Okay. Yes, sorry. Louise Varnick, your hand is up. Please go ahead, unmute yourself.
Thanks, Gerard. Thanks for interesting overview. I am particularly interested in your comments about the, shall we call it a tension, which is not necessarily a bad thing, between data science and bioinformatics. So I think the one thing that I at least see at Stellenbosch University is that, yes, data science has done a great job with advocacy, and we can certainly learn from that. But I think we can also benefit from the international interest in data science because, in a sense, bioinformatics is data science. It's just the type of data that differs between different fields. So any more ideas on how we can strengthen the association with data science and in the process also advance the bioinformatics at our universities and in industry?
I don't have any great ideas in that. What I want to try to, and I do emphasize in my interactions with data science is that I view bioinformatics as a superset of data science. We add to the basis of that data science provides, and we borrow heavily from data science. So I don't see us necessarily as being in great tension. I think that bioinformaticians add especially the domain knowledge of biology on top of data science. I am actively involved with the data science school. But, I do think that our society and bioinformatics would benefit from people who are more naturally gifted in advocacy than I am. I'm not a great speaker. I'm not a great advocate. That is just, the way that we all have our own skills. And I do think that we should try to elevate people who are good advocates to be able to do that kind of work. But I don't think that we're fundamentally in opposition. There is a huge amount of work for data scientists that does partially involve bioinformatics, biological data sets, medical data sets, but there are other fields that are also vastly expanding the astronomy, geology, geosciences. These are all large atmospheric sciences. These are all large data sciences, and data scientists, I think, are going to form a foundation for each of these separate disciplines, and bioinformatics will be one that is intimately involved with data scientists. So I think that if we see it less as tension and more as collaboration, we might get along faster. There are aspects of data science, I think, that we can borrow from. Data management is one of them. Computer science is one of them. A stronger background in mathematics would benefit us. So if we can convert a few data scientists into bioinformaticians, there would be little loss and great gain. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to add, convert more biology students to take maths and computer science, at least in their first or second years, so that we can train more bioinformaticians. It helps if you have a good, solid foundation in computer science and maths, I think.
It does indeed. And there's also a tendency of people to think that biology is done without statistics or mathematics. And we all know that that is a fallacy in reality. Much of the modern statistics was developed by biologists who happen to also be mathematicians. So, it is a fallacy to think that we can do biology in the old school manner of the, say, 18th century or even 19th century, which is purely descriptive. Much of our modern biology is actually mathematically oriented, statistically oriented. But yes, I would always try to see if we can also advocate for adding more mathematics, statistics, or computer science, or a combination of these two curricula for biology students, because they will need it eventually. And I find that many of the students initially are lacking in that kind of thinking, and it inhibits them from getting to their full potential. I see a comment. Was Fari again? We have a joint genetics computer science degree and are working on a joint applied maths genetics degree. Okay, that's great. Yeah. Any more comments or questions? That would be at the University of Pretoria. Well, thank you for attending, everybody. I hope it was a useful overview, and I hope that we can have more of these events, somewhat more interesting, more science-oriented. But I wanted to use this opportunity to address some of our membership about all our activities on behalf of the members.